If you have followed my YouTube videos, I'm sure you heard me talk a lot of times about how VeloCloud allows enterprises to better connect to their cloud resources. I mean, we have all those virtual edges in AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, and Alibaba. So kind of the four major cloud providers. And what we do is that we allow you to extend your SD-WAN fabric all the way to your data center, no matter it's your own physical one or any IaaS. However, what if you want more? What if you have workloads in other cloud providers that we currently don't cover? Or what if you want to simplify and just have the single hub edge that then connects to all these other clouds? Hybrid connectivity is also a thing, right? So how can you then deploy and connect to the cloud not only on the public internet, but also on the private MPLS? Equinix is a company that can actually help you do all that with your existing VeloCloud infrastructure. But to be honest, I really wanted somebody else, a more subject matter expert, to come and explain to us. So I'd like you all to welcome Brad, actually my first guest ever on the YouTube channel. So hopefully it all goes well. Hey, Brad.
Hey, Dimitri, thanks for having me. I really appreciate you letting me be and Equinix be your first guest. I very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thank you also for your offer. I mean, before we start, can you tell everybody a bit kind of about yourself, background, your current job as well?
Yeah, sure. Thank you again. Yeah, my name's Brad Gregory. I'm a senior product manager here at Equinix, specializing in our Network Edge product, what we're going to talk about today. But my previous career has been network engineering, architecture, design, and a lot of I live in the upper Midwest in Minneapolis with a lot of the larger companies here in town. So I spent the bulk of my career as more on the network side, doing interconnectivity, high availability architecture design from a network application standpoint. So yeah, so I've been at Equinix about 2.5 years now. Started out as a solution architect here, and then recently moved into the product management role. So, and specializing in our Network Edge product.
Mm. And I guess for everybody who might not be aware of Equinix, can you give us a kind of brief overview of the company and what kind of your major products and specializations are?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Equinix stands for Equal and Neutral Internet Exchange, and we got our start in the late 90s when a lot of the ISPs really didn't interconnect all that well. So Equinix went to a bunch of the ISPs and said, guys, get out of that business arguing about who's pairing with who, and come to us, and we'll be this great interconnection data center platform for you to interconnect all of your networks together. So that started in 1998. The first internet exchange in DC was in an Equinix facility. It was, and then we had a internet exchange on the West Coast, but they were May East and May West. I don't know if people are familiar with internet exchanges or not. And then over time, I like to say that Equinix is really Metcalfe's law in motion when you think about it. So all of these interconnection points are these new services and types of interconnections that needed to come online. People looked at it and said, where do these things already exist? So in the case of the internet, it was already there starting in the late 90s, as I said. And then when the content providers came along, they said, where do we interconnect with all these other things? Because we want to be part of the ecosystem. So they looked at it and said, okay, well there's already these internet exchanges started. Let's just connect into the internet exchange. Financial exchanges came along, several years later, asked the same question, where do we interconnect? And they looked and did the same evaluation, came in the same answer, that we want to connect where these things have already started to interconnect. So it's just been an evolution over time. So about 8 to 10 years ago, the cloud providers, same question, where do I interconnect? And they interconnect in our data centers. So Equinix has the largest interconnection of cloud providers in our data centers. So if you need to on-ramp in any cloud provider, their equipment, for the most part, lives in our data centers, and we can interconnect you there. So really the main thing that Equinix will bring to the table is the interconnection. The value that Equinix will bring to the table is the rich ecosystem of interconnectivity at all of these interconnection points that have evolved over time and really have evolved into these fixed points. In the U.S., it's mainly D.C., Silicon Valley, Chicago, Dallas. In Europe, Frankfurt, London, Amsterdam. Um, so if you think about where all of these things interconnect and come together, Equinix is in the middle of it. And then cloud is just the next evolution of that interconnection story.
Mm. And I guess this segues perfectly in Network Edge, right? Because that's your kind of area of focus at the moment. So tell us more about that.
Yeah, it absolutely does. So initially, 2014, 15, we came out with a solution called Cloud Exchange. And what Cloud Exchange did was it interconnected our switching infrastructure to all the major cloud providers and more. There's literally 80, 90, 100, 150 places you can connect on a Cloud Exchange. But the Cloud Exchange was a way for customers to physically put a switch in our data center, physically connect their switch into the ECX, we call it Equinix Cloud Exchange, but physically connect it into the ECX switch. And then over that single physical connection, you create a bunch of logical connections. So it was a single point of abstraction to connect into the cloud. And then over that single physical connection to the cloud providers, you just create layer 2 connections and you start spinning up connections to clouds in a matter of minutes. So it really did two things. One, well, actually three things. One, it gave you a single point of abstraction to do cloud interconnection. It interconnected all these clouds, as I said earlier, in these places where all the clouds lived. And the third thing it did, because we were in close proximity to where all the clouds lived, it really gave you a viable low latency multi-cloud solution. So in DC, for example, if you connect to the major cloud providers in DC via the Cloud Exchange, all those clouds are within 2 to 3 milliseconds of each other. So if you think about writing applications from a cloud standpoint, you don't necessarily think about writing applications to a single cloud anymore. You write applications to the big cloud, right? And then you can have solutions where your cloud's really a la carte. You can get directory services from one cloud provider, storage from another cloud provider, database services from another cloud provider. And since they're all within 2 to 3, 4 milliseconds of each other, you really have a viable solution for a public cloud, multi-hybrid cloud connectivity, because everything is low latency, and everything is in close proximity, and you can have large bandwidth. So it really makes multi-tiered cloud applications and hybrid cloud applications viable.
That's great. And I guess we just recently announced an integration with VeloCloud and Equinix. So is there anything you can show us on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll share a real quick deck as to how Network Edge works. I don't want to PowerPoint you to death, but 3 or 4 slides, and then I'll give you a real quick demo of how it all stitches together.
No, that would be great. Not many people with a lot of attention span these days. I mean, I'm talking about myself now. Too. But yeah, I can imagine I'm not the only one. So
yeah, no, I totally agree. I've got about 10 to 15 minute time span too, or attention span when it comes to this stuff too. So no problem. So very quickly, what we've done with Network Edge. So Network Edge is our virtual networking platform that's an extension of the Cloud Exchange. So when I was talking earlier about the Cloud Exchange, how it's physically plumbed into all the cloud providers. And then you kind of wire once into the Cloud Exchange, and then you start building a lot of virtual connections to connect out to all the cloud providers. So a lot of customers came to us and said, we don't really want to be in the hardware business anymore. That's why we're moving to the cloud. We're putting all of our compute and storage in the cloud. We want to do the same thing from a networking standpoint. So what we did was we built this NFV infrastructure here, this Equinix infrastructure, and that's the glue in the middle that ties virtual network functions into the clouds that you want to connect to from an interconnection standpoint. So if you think about it, I guess the ECX switch lives here, the Cloud Exchange switch, and the NFV infrastructure again is an extension or an appendage of the Cloud Exchange. So the way you deploy a Velo device is you just go into our portal and you select VeloCloud from the marketplace, spin up the virtual network device. We call them VNF, virtual network functions, but you spin up the VeloCloud VNF that's part of the NFV infrastructure. And then once you've spun these up, you've selected the VNF, you deploy it where you want to deploy it, and then you start connecting to the cloud services. It's really that simple. And we like to say, we've taken cloud interconnectivity now from months to minutes, because before, when you wanted to on-ramp into the cloud, you would have to deploy physical equipment out here in our data center. So, that might take 4, 6, 8 weeks. You'd have to, there's a capital investment. You'd have to buy equipment, ship it out to our data centers, rack it and stack it, and then you're able to make the connection. Well, here, you can spin up a connection into a cloud, spin up a Velo device, deploy it on our NFV infrastructure, and start building connections into the cloud providers, literally in a matter of minutes. So it's really taking the elasticity, the rapid elasticity of the cloud closer to the front door of your enterprise, because now we're able to virtualize the cloud piece, whereas before we couldn't. You had all this real nice elasticity in the public cloud, but to get to the public cloud was still this kind of slow physical process. Now it's all a virtual process to spin Velo Cloud VNFs up, deploy a hub device here on our infrastructure, connect your edge devices into that hub device, and then start connecting into the clouds. And the biggest thing, as I touched on earlier, is elasticity. You want to be able to move quickly. The only way you can move quickly is to have an underlay already in place, and then I always like to say the overlay can only move at the speed of the underlay. So what Equinix has done is we've given you the underlay. The NFV infrastructure is the underlay. All of the interconnection to the cloud via the cloud exchange is the underlay. So we've built the underlay, and we're just waiting for anybody to come spin up an overlay to be able to connect into the cloud providers, as we've been discussing. So the biggest use cases, I don't want to walk through each one of them, but if you think about anything you want to do quick, or you want to have a complementary strategy, or you want to deploy somewhere where it's difficult to get hardware, bullet point number 3, Sao Paulo is a big use case for that. You don't have to worry about getting procuring equipment, shipping it to Sao Paulo, and getting it rack and stack in your cabinet. You can just spin up a virtual device, and away you go. So they're kind of the main use cases. So think about any of the other use cases when you transition from physical to virtual. Those same use cases apply here. And this is a great visual, because it stitches everything together on Platform Equinix. We call it Platform Equinix. There's a lot of other things that we do as well, but a lot of the things we do, or everything we do, is kind of built around interconnection. So this is really showing the interconnection and how it all stitches together. So if you have a branch location, you spin up a VeloCloud at the branch, and just like anything else, however you connect now over SD-WAN, 5G, internet, metro, MPLS, we really don't care. That's just an underlay. We don't really care how the connectivity is made from the branch location to the hub device that's spun up on our Network Edge platform. We just care that you get there. So once it's brought in, you have that nice single layer of abstraction that you see on the platform there, Azure, AWS, Google, Oracle. Again, there's a lot of other clouds that we have there. We have ISPs on there. We have NSPs on the cloud. And we also have an option for you to bring your own connection to the cloud. So if you are, if you want to bring a Ethernet private line circuit into the cloud exchange, you can do that too. So it's really flexible in the types of connections you can bring to the cloud. Again, we want to be that underlay provider, so you can build overlay connections and have this nice layer of abstraction on our platform. And then we take care of the underlay. We take care of the proximity, the locations where you want to be, and then you start building cloud connections. And as I was saying earlier, if you spun this up in DC, all those clouds, those 4 cloud providers, are within 2-3 milliseconds of each other. So a good visual representation. If you think about it, you could have directory services in Azure, compute in AWS, big data in Google, and a database in Oracle. And if you put all of those components of your application within 1 to 2, 3 milliseconds of each other, it really makes a viable solution when you want to write low latency multi-cloud applications. So if I could leave you with one visual, this would be it. You know, how Equinix is able to quickly instantiate services that are cloud adjacent from a low latency multi-cloud standpoint, using Velo. You know, we'll provide the hub there at that abstraction point, and then you just start connecting your branch locations into the hub, and away you go. And the last slide I want to leave you with before we look at a demo real quick is this is where it's available now. So everywhere in blue is available, and everywhere in orange is coming in 2020. So you can kind of see that, you know, the big ones we did were to kind of take care of the main locations, you know, DC, Silicon Valley, Chicago, Dallas, London, Amsterdam, Frankfurt, Singapore, Sydney. But you can see the expansion and where we're looking to expand in the future. Okay, so a real quick demo of how it looks like and how you start instantiating services, virtual network services in Equinix. Remember I said earlier where the NFV platform is an extension of the Cloud Exchange fabric. So you manage and build devices and create connections as part of the ECX portal. So when you get a log into the portal, you'll log in with your credentials, and you'll see right here there's a tab called Network Edge. So to start building services, you just go into Network Edge and create a connection. I won't really dive into the details of HA versus non-HA. You can please reach out to us afterwards, and we can deep dive into all these components. But we'll just show you how to create a single device here at the Network Edge with Network Edge. So these are the VNFs that are supported. You know, Velo is down here, so you just click on Velo, click continue, and we kind of give you these three things are what you're going to need and kind of how to set up your environment to get ready for the deployment. Have these things ready, click next, and then we call cities or places where we deploy infrastructure, have infrastructure, metros. So you select the metro that you want to connect to. In this case, we'll just select Ashburn, and you'll have a billing account. Select the billing account that you want to connect to. And then here's where you'll put in all the device details. You know, your license key. In this case, you'll have to bring your own license, the software package, the term length. You name the device, just different things, just standard stuff. It's not that hard to figure out. Give it a notification here of when you want to be notified when the device is up and ready for you to connect to. And then we also give you a pricing overview here, so you know exactly what it's going to cost before you spin it up. So I won't spin one up here. I'll just give you a demo and show you one, or show you one that we've already spun up. So this is what it looks like when you've spun a device up. You know, here's the account that you spun up, or the account that you used when you spun the device up. And then down here is just a lot of good information about the device. The main thing here that I want to show you is the external IP address. So we'll assign an external IP address for every device, and that external IP address is the endpoint that you will target when you build the SD-WAN overlay. So that's the device right there that you'll have your edge devices connect to. This will be the IP address of the hub device. Then you start creating connections. I already have a few connections created to this device. So in this case, you know, we spun up 3 connections as part of our test. There's a connection to Google, a connection to AWS, and a connection into my WAN. I've simulated how to connect into our WAN from like you're connecting over your wide area network. So if you look at the orchestrator, here's the device that we created earlier that we were looking at. And it shows up just like any other device you would create and manage via the orchestrator. And I'll show you what the BGP configuration looks like. Very simple BGP configuration. Here, you just go in just like you'd configure out any other BGP configuration. You give it the IP or the neighbor peering IP, the ASN number you're connecting to, and away you go. There's also some advanced settings. You know, again, you guys are very familiar with the BCO, the VeloCloud orchestrator. But this is the connections that we created via the VCO to get to all of the peering that we established up with the cloud providers here, and with my connection to simulate a WAN connection. These interfaces that get spun up, so very much looks like any other device that you would spin up. And here's the public IP address that we saw earlier. So that's the way everything looks from a from a Velo standpoint. So pretty easy to configure. And if you want to create a connection, we give you create connection buttons all over the place because we want you to create connections. But to create a connection, you just click on create connection. And let's simulate a connection to Google. So Google has a concept of zones, and we're kind of going to do the same thing for the connection as we did for when you spun up the device. I'm going to tell you these are the things you need before you create a connection into Google. So, so now we're back to the origin destination. So the origin metro, we'll spin it up in Ashburn. Go down, here's the device we had, the VeloCloud device. We'll give it a destination in Ashburn. Click next. Name the connection. Put the key in there, the pairing key. And then these are all the connection speeds you have. But we'll just select 50 meg, just to make it simple. And then click next. And this is the connection you'll create into Zone 1 in Ashburn for Google, for example. So I won't submit the order, but that's what you'll do. That's what the connection looks like. It's pretty simple. And then once you've created this connection in the portal, in the ECX portal, what this connection does, it's going to stitch the interface on the VeloCloud device to the Google Cloud Interconnect Layer 2 connection into GCP. So it's going to build that Layer 2 underlay, and then once that Layer 2 underlay is built, you go to the Google port, the GCP portal, and configure Layer 3 there, and you go back into the demo, into the VeloCloud portal, and create that connection to stitch those two together via Layer 3. Then once you've done that, pairing is established, and you're ready to start sending traffic back and forth to Google.
I mean, this sounds extremely simple, actually. If you think about the pain somebody has to get through to manually integrate all these clouds together, and I can see there are just a few clicks. You can just make it happen. Again, no hardware, no need for a physical data center as well. You did mention there, but I think it's quite important that you can bring your own MPLS provider, right, to Equinix?
Yes, you can. Yep. And we've got a documentation out there that shows how to do it. But yeah, basically the way you do it is you order the MPLS connection to our data center where the ECX switch lives, and then we run a physical cable from the DMARC of your MPLS provider into our ECX switch, and that's the way we're able to provide it. So if you think about it, since the network edge is an extension of the cloud exchange, everything that you connect to on the cloud exchange, or everything you connect to has to be on the cloud exchange, I should say. So it either has to be on the cloud exchange, or you have to bring it and get it on the cloud exchange. But once it's on the cloud exchange, you can connect to it.
And also, customers will have to, bring their own licenses. I mean, you did describe that earlier, right? So they will need to purchase edges for kind of each of their sites, their branches. They will deploy the virtual edge as per your demo there. I mean, that's just a normal virtual edge deployment at the data center with, our DMPO and VPN on one side, on the public IP address, and BGP on the other to just create the routing. But definitely quite simple and very intuitive. And but just to mention that obviously you guys are not gonna be providing the VeloCloud licenses or the cost to using all the other cloud providers.
Yeah, that's correct. Good point. Yeah, you'll have to bring your own license, and then this cost that you see here, this is the cost that Equinix will charge you for that 50 meg virtual circuit. So whatever cost you incur from the cloud provider, so in this case Google, they're going to charge you, $50 or whatever the cost would be for a 50 meg circuit, and you'll get billed directly from Google for that.
Yeah. Well, one last thing I wanted to clarify. I do believe, watching one of the internal sessions here, that there is a way you can link multiple regions, right? So if I had VeloCloud in different parts of the world, I can actually use your backbone to connect them all together.
Yeah, absolutely. Great point. I almost forgot that. Thanks, Dimitri. It's a very important point. Yeah, so we, across our cloud exchange, we have the ECX fabric. So what we did in 2017, 2018 is we took all of our ECX locations where we had an ECX switch deployed, and we wove all those locations via a fabric. So all of those locations are connected via fabric internally. So if you want to connect, DC to Silicon Valley, you can connect that across our fabric. So if you wanted to connect, if you spun up a Velo device in DC, a Velo device in Silicon Valley, you could have the option to connect that across our fabric. Exactly.
Mm.
And a lot of customers like that because it brings that rapid elasticity. Now we brought it to the WAN. You don't necessarily have to procure WAN circuits, commit to a 1 or 3 year commit on the circuit. You can spin up a device. Maybe you want a 1 gig circuit between DC and Silicon Valley for 3 days because you want to move a bunch of data around. And then after those 3 days, you take it back down to a 100 meg circuit. You can do that. You spin it up and you pay daily. It's daily billing for connections across the fabric.
I mean, all this sounds great. I mean, I have to say I'm quite impressed with the solution here. But where can people go to find out more if they're interested in what you just showed them?
Yeah, it's really easy. Go to edgeservices.equinix.com right here. Click on Network Edge, and anything you want to know about Network Edge will be right here. But please, I think my email popped up there a couple places. So feel free to reach out to me or your Equinix account team or your Velo team, and we'll make sure we'll get answers for you and answer any questions you have. We can deep dive on the demo, deep dive on the technology. But the initial place, if you want to, if you just want to go out and read more about it before reaching out, this is a good place to do it. edgeservices.equinix.com. And you can also click Talk to Us right here, and we'll get the email, and someone will reach out to you.
Yeah, not you particularly. So yeah, you can't talk. Initially, you can't talk to Brad. Maybe a bit later. But yeah, I mean that's a valid point. I mean, it's the proof is in the pudding, and I think it's great to have a sit down and understand more of the requirements and how we can build something that's both performant and cost effective as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Velo's in the overlay business. We're in the underlay business. So I think
it's a good match. It's
perfect partnership. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I don't really want to hold you more. I want to thank you very much. It was very interesting to see, and definitely a very cool solution that we will be hearing more about. And personally, I wanted to thank you for being my first guest. Hopefully, I'll see you soon every time we get a new update.
Yeah, I look forward to it. Again, thank you so much, Dimitri.
Thanks, Brad.